we have a research agenda. For me, I think that the important research questions in this area, the big intellectual questions, have to do with the origin of behaviors and values and norms. Where do these things come from? No doubt they're partly genetic, but they're also socially constructed. How can we use these data to understand the origin of these fundamental things? What are the origins of social structure and collective action? A very ancient problem, but one we're still very interested in. How do groups come to be organized? The origin, and finally, the super-individual, institutional, and structural constraints on individual action. Can we use these kind of data to understand how it is that you can move between the individual and the collective level of understanding? Now, similar problems, of course, are being faced in bioinformatics, and along with Laszlo, for example, we're studying a database of 12 million patients who have 32 million hospitalizations, each time of which they could have up to 10 diagnoses, drawn from a set of 10,000 unique diagnoses, and every one of these hospitalizations can occur at a particular moment in time across a 10-year period. So good luck to us to try to figure out what's going on in all these data. We have some ideas, and of course, very analogous problems obtained with genes. You've got 25,000 genes, which are expressed at different moments in time, in different individuals, and so forth and so on. So my last slide, I think it's important to understand that more careful and more complete observations are great, but what are they in the service of? Will data collection in its breadth and detail prove to be like the data that Tycho Brahe had and was analyzed by Kepler? Or will it be a distracting profusion of noise? And in 1563, when he was 17, Tycho said the following: "I've studied all available charts of the planets and stars, and none of them match the others. There are just as many measurements and methods as there are astronomers, and all of them disagree. What's needed is a long-term project with the aim of mapping the heavens, conducted from a single location over a period of several years." Thank you.
Let this be that location.
I
think we're going to take questions. Is that right?
Yeah.
So I think we have around 10 minutes for questions. And so, sure.
Who's that?
So you made a point about data as commodity, and it's sort of intriguing to think, on the one hand, we're getting lots of data from lots of new sources, but then the people who own this data are going to be able to choose the analysts who come to it. And I wonder if that's actually true. If there's going to be so much data available that actually the market will work in reverse and put the power back in the hands of the analysts, because if they can't get the telephone data, they'll go get the internet data. If they can get the internet data, they'll get the email data.
I don't know. I can't predict which way it's going to happen, but I sense a little subtle shift in people like financial organizations and other corporations that have lots of data, or government agencies that have lots of data, which of course operate under different constraints, in their attitude towards the value of the data. So even in even in my career, 10 or 15 years ago, I would go to organizations and say, "Can I have some of your data, which you're not using anyway? You just regard it as administrative data, but I have some interesting social science questions." And they said, "Oh, sure, go ahead." And they didn't see it as much value. But I think now they're seeing that there is value in their data, and that they shouldn't willy-nilly just give it to anyone who asks. And that, as a result, they're having in-house analysts who aren't, to be blunt, I think as sophisticated oftentimes as we are, but who nevertheless, it's good enough for them. And if they contract with us to release the data, they have a kind of different power position, I think, than they did. I don't know how it's all going to play out, but I sense a little bit of a change in this.
So, James, I think you're right, and your distinguished co-author is wrong.
That's what we need to adjudicate all our disputes. Can we call you in the middle of the night now?
I think Nicholas is right in the sense that if you ask somebody for data and they have it and you don't have it, then they control something that you want and they have power over you. But I think the bigger picture is that it used to be that information was really expensive and it really had a lot of value and you would pay a lot for information. Now information is free. What's expensive is meaning. Right? So you can get information. It's just pouring in. Just hook up to the internet. And there's so much information you don't know what to do with. If you can explain what to do with, that's valuable.
No,
right?
no.
So So the statisticians will rule the world, in some sense. The analysts.
Disinterested point of view.
Just totally disinterested. That's right.
Yeah, seeing. I mean, I'm not trying to suggest that sort of kind of mindless. I'm not by any stretch of the imagination defending the idea that mindless data mining is the appropriate thing to do. I'm just trying to point out the fact that that these data are, while massive and huge, are regarded as valuable by the people who own them because we've taught them that there's something cool that can be done with it. And I think that, as I said, discerning the signal from the noise is still a huge challenge, and I think we do obviously have expertise in that area. Yeah, Laszlo.
Anyway, so Gary, I have a question to you actually. You mentioned that we have no idea how to analyze, for example, the traces of humans using statistical methods. And I fully tend to agree with you. I would even go further, and I would say the very existence of statistical methods is a problem for the field because there are people who think they can use the standard methods to analyze them, and there are killing publications and everything as you're trying to push on them the traditional methods that were kind of developed for completely different reasons.
Right.
So how to change that? Really? I mean, like, how are we going to have to wait until the statistical community comes around and looks at these data sets on their own terms and not simply trying to take their own actual work from it?
Yeah, I think in some sense I should answer all questions the way I did the previous one. The statisticians, I'll change it. The statisticians should rule the world. No, but I think you're absolutely right. People will often say, the data are not that good. And, actually, as an aside, no matter how good the data are not that good because we're always pushing the edge of the envelope. Okay, so it doesn't matter how many observations you have. Have you noticed that all t-statistics in all journals are around 2? I mean, plus or minus 3. They're never 150, right? And the reason why is because if you have 27 million observations, you just break it up into enough categories so that it's 2, right? Right. The value of the t-statistic is what you condition on. It's not a finding. But in any event, people often say the data are not good enough. They don't admit to fancy new statistical methods that you have to develop specially for them. Instead, we have to use off-the-shelf methods, and that's actually the opposite of the truth. Okay, the only reason you need sophisticated methods is to deal with the problems in the data. If you have screamingly clear relationships and data with no error, which probably wasn't created by humans, of course, right? Then you don't need complicated statistical methods. So I totally agree. David.
Okay. So I'm, of course, highly sympathetic to your thoughts on Tycho Brahe. But if it's just your volume, I mean, you've had the stock market for a long time. There's a tremendous amount of data coming from that. You haven't been able to make systematic sense of it. So it's not just volume. It's something, the underlying regularity of the system. And that's what the plan is for, this ridiculously well-behaved natural experiment. I guess my thought is, do you think there's anything that well-behaved on the internet? So the volume of data gives us some underlying traction.
I'm glad he asked you.
No, he asked you. You're the one that talked about volume of the internet.
Some yes, some no. We're going to have to find that out. Right? I think we're going to.
David and I talk about this all the time. I mean, I'm an eternal optimist in this regard. I mean, I think there are really profound regularities in the social world. The question is, are there regularities which we have not yet discerned? Or are we just finding more sophisticated ways of confirming what we already know, which goes back to Gary's point of I'm going to study this, and then I'm going to study that, and I'm going to study that. I mean, can we identify real phenomena like the planets, which weren't visible until we had this data?
I mean, that's right. The thing about that data set is that, starting with Ptolemy, who we're working on it, and of course the refinement increased, of course, with Tycho Brahe historically. But the fact that everyone agreed that there was one data set that we need to understand, it would be nice if we all agreed there was one data set we need to understand.
The Tycho Brahe thing, Damon, was a metaphor.
Let's suppose you're interested in crime, okay? And let's suppose you're interested in crime, and you have the number of crimes or murders or whatever it is at the end of every month, okay? Maybe even at the end of every month for every city. You could run some nice regressions, okay? But then if you knew where every crime was geocoded to exactly the time and the place, maybe you won't be able to fix this problem, but you ought to be able to make a heck of a lot more progress.
So, Nick, I was struck by the questions you listed at the end of your talk, and by their process.
proximity to the questions that the inventors of survey